Hey guys, welcome. Alright, so I've been reading through the comment section, and there's a couple people in the comment section that I'm just like, oh man, you guys are really, really dumb. The things that you say and the things that you believe are just really, really stupid. And I haven't been the friendliest to you people who say the dumb things in the comment section, so I'd like to take this moment to apologize. Because I didn't realize that it was not your fault that you're so stupid. I didn't realize that you probably don't have the ability to change. And I want to go over why that is for the people who are also looking at everybody and being like, "Oh, they're stupid." We need to be nicer to them, and let's find out why. So let's first talk about IQ or
What looks to
listen.
be. So how smart do you have to be different things in life? Well, if have an IQ of 116 to 130,
Right here.
which is 85th percentile and above, so it's one person in 8 up to one person in 130, I believe is 85, 90, 95? Is it 95? I think it's 95. One person in 8 to one person in 20. Then you can be a attorney, a research analyst, an editor, an advertising manager, a chemist, an engineer, an executive manager, etc.
All right, now pause real quick. He is going to state later in the video, and I'll just go ahead and state it now. 130 is not the top. It goes up and up and up and up. As far as I know, there is no upper limit. And there are other things that obviously have a higher IQ, but these are general things. Once you're here, you're in the upper echelons. Okay?
That's the now that's not the high end for IQ, by the way.
Yeah,
You know
see,
that
okay,
it
good. He
can
says it
go
right
up.
here.
Well, it can go up indefinitely, although there's fewer and fewer people as it goes up. So if you want to be the best at what you're doing, bar none, then having an IQ of above 145 is a necessity, and maybe you're pushing 160 in some situations.
Let's pause it here also. When he says IQ, he is talking about your general cognitive ability, your ability to problem solve, your ability to think about things that are somewhat abstract. He uses a really good story in a different video about training someone who has an IQ of like 85, and the person had a hard time understanding how to take a piece of paper, fold it in thirds so that it would fit into an envelope, and how to do that consistently. On top of that, there were things that were stapled onto said piece of paper sometimes, and were not always stapled in the same area. So then, on top of having to learn how to just fold a piece of paper in a third so it fits into an envelope, he had to do that where would fold around the thing stapled on without bending that because it was a photo to get it in there. And then, on top of that, he had to learn how to differentiate between English and French to make sure the certain letters went into the proper envelopes. For most of us, that seems like an easy thing, but when he's talking about this, he said it spent him, 30 plus hours of training this person how to do that. I did not realize that the lower your IQ is, that it is literally harder for you to learn how to do things that are very, very simple.
And maybe that's making you one person in 10,000 or even one person in 100,000. And then also, to really be good at it, you probably have to be reasonably stress tolerant and also somewhat conscientious. So, people, well, you think, well, why is it that smart people are at the top of dominance hierarchies? And the answer to that, in part, is because they get there first.
Okay, let's take this what he just said and put it away for later. Why is it that smart people get to the top of the dominance hierarchy? Those two words, dominance hierarchy. Keep that in mind.
Right? I mean, everything's a race, roughly speaking. And the faster you are, the more likely you are to be at the forefront of the pack. And intelligence, in large part, is speed. That's not all of it is. So if you're moving towards something difficult rapidly, the faster people are going to get there first. So IQ of 115, 110 to 115.
All
So
right,
that's
right here.
85th to 73rd to 85th percentile. Copywriter, accountant, manager, sales analyst, general manager, purchasing agent, registered nurse, sales account executive. If you look at universities, the smartest people they're above this. Who are the smartest people at university? What do you think? Mathematicians, physicists and mathematicians, right, right. I could tell you who's on the other end, but I won't.
All right. He's not going to tell you. I will. He wants to say it's the social scientist because he does not believe that any of the things that the social scientists are studying are real. So transgender studies and all
Yeah,
that
I'd like to
bullshit.
though.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's who he's talking
anyways,
about.
okay. Going down now 103 to 108 is slightly above average, right? 60th to 70th percentile. Store manager, bookkeeper, credit clerk, lab tester, general sales, telephone sales, accounting clerk, computer operator, customer service rep, technician, clerk, typist. So you see at this level, people have some technical skill and some ability to deal with complex things. Okay, that's dead average. 100 is average.
100's average right here. So this is 50% of the population is this smart.
Cashier, general clerical, inside sales clerk, meter reader, printer, teller, data entry, electrical helper.
All right.
95th to 98. Machinist, food department manager.
Also, when you start getting below the hundreds, as far as IQ points go, you are. When you're in the 80s, that's when you're looking really bad. But when you get under 100, things aren't looking the greatest for you.
Quality control checker, security guard, unskilled labor, maintenance, arc welder, die setter, mechanic. Good IQ range for relatively qualified tradespeople.
Trades.
87 to 93. Messenger, factory production worker, assembler, food service worker, nurse's aide, warehouseman, custodian, janitor, material handler, packer. Now, what you're starting to see is that as you move down the hierarchy, the jobs get simpler.
This is really interesting. The jobs get simpler. Here, I'm going to rewind it.
As you move down the hierarchy, the jobs get simpler. They're more likely to be assigned by other people, or they're repetitive. Because what IQ predicts to some degree is how rapidly you can learn something, but once you've learned it, it doesn't predict necessarily how well you do at it. And so the more repetitive jobs people with lower IQs are more suited to more repetitive jobs. Under 87, is there something? Well, no.
Okay, now, let's stop for a moment. There are no jobs that are suited for someone, not suited, but there are no jobs for these type of people.
Right. That's a big problem. And it's something our society has not addressed at all. Jobs for people with IQs of less than 85 are very, very rare. So what the hell are those people supposed to do? It's like it's 15% of the population.
Hang on a second. Think about this now. 15% of the population doesn't really have anything that they are not cognitively suited to be able to perform tasks at that level.
What are they supposed to do? Well, we better figure it out, because one of the things that's happening too is that as the high IQ tech geeks get a hold of the world, the demand for cognitive power is increasing, not decreasing, right? You want to be a teller? Well, those checkout machines, they're not so simple. You want to work at McDonald's? You think that's a simple job? You don't see robots working at McDonald's. And the reason for that is that what McDonald's workers do is too complex for robots to do.
For those of you who haven't guessed it, the food service worker is a McDonald's job, which is the lowest bracket of IQ jobs that he just presented.
So this is a discussion that no one wants to have, but that's okay. It's still a problem, and it has to be dealt with. So the U.S. government, I think I told you this at one point already, it's illegal to induct anyone into the U.S. Army if they have an IQ of less than 83.
Pause. The U.S. government, someone who, and he's talking about the armed forces. They will not recruit you in because you cannot be trained for something as simple as a meat shield with an IQ of under 83.
Right? It's about 10% of the population.
That's crazy.
Because the U.S. Army, and they've been doing IQ testing since IQ testing began.
That's 1 in 10 people. 1 in 10 people are too stupid to be in the military. Not because of what they do or do not know, because of their ability to learn.
Because they want everybody they can possibly began. Because they want everybody they can possibly read. Right? It's about 10% of the population. Because the U.S. Army, and they've been doing IQ testing since IQ testing began, because they want everybody they can possibly get into the Army, because in peacetime, they use it as a way of moving people up the socioeconomic ladder, and in wartime, well, obviously, you need as many soldiers as you can get your hands on. And so you're not going to be any pickier than you have to be. So when the U.S. Army says it's illegal to induct anybody into the armed forces if they have an IQ of less than 83, then you know that they've done it for absolute necessity. right? And when people have made a finding that contradicts what they want to hear and they're doing it out of absolute necessity, you can be reasonably true that it's one of those facts that just won't bloody well go away. And so you might think, well, if there's nothing for someone with an IQ of less than 83 to do in the Army, what makes you think that there's something that they can do in the general population? And then the issue is, you know, because the conservatives will say, well, they should just work harder. It's like, sorry, that ain't going to fly. And the liberals will say, well, there's no difference between people anyhow, and you can just train people to do everything. And that's wrong. So they're both wrong, and they're seriously wrong. And
Okay, so let's pause it here, right? So we've established that your IQ gives you the ability on able to do certain jobs or tasks that require a certain ability, right? You have to be able to, if you want to be a lawyer, you have to know the law, you have to have those things memorized, where if you're a factory worker, you may have to just put in a sheet of metal, hit a button, pull the sheet of metal out, and maybe a few more steps. Okay, so it ranges. So your intelligence, your IQ, bases where you are in the socioeconomic status. You are going to more than likely get more money the more intelligent you are because your job is more complex. It requires more things, right? So, and remember, very specifically, he said that the intelligence people are the ones who climb the dominance hierarchy the fastest. So now let's go and talk about this thing called the Gini coefficient, okay? And we're going to talk about how these two things coincide.
so there's this interesting phenomenon that's very characteristic of societies, I believe pretty much everywhere it's being studied. Now, you can calculate an index called the Gini coefficient. And the Gini coefficient is a number that represents how much inequality of income distribution there is in a given geographical area. So you could calculate a Gini coefficient for a street or an area in a city or a state or a country. You can do it at all those levels.
All right, let me pause right here. So what he's basically saying is this is a formula that you can plug in things and you can calculate the difference between poor people and rich people, you know, on how many there are and how big that gap is between the poor and the rich. So so you can plug this in and you can find out that there are a lot of poor people and there are a lot of rich people and there are not a lot of people in the middle, and that is a high difference, right? Or you can find out that there isn't really a lot of, so that's what this formula is for, the Gini coefficient.
And what you find is, you always hear this idea that poverty causes crime. That's a classic left-wing idea, but it's wrong. It's seriously wrong, and it's importantly wrong, and it's definitively wrong. Not only that, so there's no argument about this. It's already been established. What causes crime, especially aggressive crime, is relative poverty. And relative poverty is not the same thing as poverty at all. It's seriously not the same thing.
Pay attention to this. This is very key.
Poverty is when you don't have enough to eat. Relative poverty is when the guy next door has a much better car than you.
Okay, so with that right there, we can already establish. Oh, hey, let's keep going. Hang on, I'll let it sit.
And there's lots of relative poverty in the United States, and there's some absolute poverty, but even the absolute poverty in the United States is nothing like the absolute poverty, say, in places like India or in sub-Saharan Africa, where absolute poverty means you have nothing. Now, what's really interesting about the Gini coefficient is that if you go to places where everyone, roughly speaking, is poor, say by national standards, I think South Dakota was often used as an example, or maybe one of the...
This is very interesting too.
Like Newfoundland, where there's low average income, but it's pretty flat distribution. There's almost no crime. And if you go to places where everyone's rich, then there's almost no crime. But if you go to places where there are poor people and moderately well-off people and rich people, and the distribution is really steep, then the rate of aggressive behavior among young men, and it's usually within their own ethnic group, starts to skyrocket out of control.
So, think about what he just said. The more financial inequality there is between the bottom and the top, the more violent aggression there is. Well, the more aggression, the more crime, and the more violent that crime becomes, the higher the disparity between those two numbers, right? So, and it also happens within their own ethnic group. Well, we've just established that your ability to make money stems from your IQ. So if you have a low IQ, you're not making a lot of money. Therefore, you're more likely to be the type of people we see in the comment section who wants to fly off the handle and just spout nonsense. You're not intelligent, and you don't necessarily have the ability to change. So let's continue to watch. And I'm sorry, I didn't realize this.
And the reason for that seems to be that if the dominance hierarchy is too steep, then the
Oh,
young
oh, oh,
men,
dominance hierarchy. Here it
usually
is.
within their own ethnic group, starts to skyrocket out of control. And the reason for that seems to be that if the dominance hierarchy is too steep, then the young men have no likelihood of climbing to a dominant position while playing the standard social game. And so what they do is turn to aggression to make their mark on the world.
So here's what he's saying. You're too dumb to make it to the higher rungs of society because of your IQ, which leads you to aggression. That aggression is something that you take on to substitute your inability to support yourself or climb the social ladder. And so you want to use that aggression to get up. So what he's going to say here shortly is that you don't want to play within the rules, so you break them.
And it works too. That's the other thing, is that make no mistake about it. If you're looking for status in a place where status is hard to achieve, and you're the meanest, toughest guy around, then and around a bunch of people who, like you, don't have much money, then you're going to benefit from that status. It works. Yeah.
Would that be part of the reason why? Because I think that violent crime rate in the U.S. is higher than it is in Canada. Would that be part of the reason why?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can make a real conservative argument for making sure that, the conservatives are very anti-income distribution, and we figure that's because of the guys that have this male independence. They identify with this male independence factor. They don't want to be distributing resources to people who are down the dominance hierarchy because they want them down in the dominance hierarchy. They want there to be a difference between the people on top and the people on the bottom so that they can be the people on top, so that it increases their relative attractiveness. Like, it's a perfectly logical game. And they presume that, well, the rules are set up and like every man can go for it, do his best, and the winner wins and the loser loses, and that's just how it is. And don't ask me to fix it because I don't want to, And besides that, I find it distasteful to attempt to fix it. More than that, right? Because it's a moral issue. It's not just an intellectual issue. So you can make a case. However, you can make a case from the conservative point of view, especially with regards to, say, beliefs in religious traditionalism and the desire to maintain social stability, that you shouldn't let income distribution become too unequal. Like, one of the big things your society has to do is to make sure that that doesn't get out of hand, because it tends to get out of hand. It tends towards a few people having everything and almost everyone else having nothing. It's a natural, in a sense, it's a natural consequence of economic progression, which is actually something that Marx pointed out, although an Italian named Pareto had figured it out at approximately the same time, and I think with a lot more conceptual clarity. But the more unequal you let your society get, the higher the probability of death, roughly speaking, through.
So here's what's happening, right? We have people in America who don't make enough money, whose intelligence is lacking and therefore is limiting their ability to make money, and they see other people who have stuff that they want, and they decide, well, I can't get it through the normal means, not because they actually can't, because they're not smart enough to figure out a way how. And so what they decide to do is to turn to crime and violence to get their way. And then they want to blame other people for their decisions. Or when they're dead, other people who are friends with them want to blame other people for their decisions. There's no taking responsibility for yourselves. I'm sorry, comment section. All of you who are so angry all the time and are always like, fuck the cops, when it's obvious that the person who got shot and is dead now of their own choices. I didn't realize that you guys didn't have the cognitive ability to look at the situation and realize the nuance in what's happening to come to a real logical conclusion for what's I didn't get it. I didn't realize you guys were just not capable.
through violent causes, and you know, um, but I'm telling you why is that men want to climb the dominance hierarchy, and the reason they want to climb the dominance hierarchy is because that's how they get access to women.
And here's the fucking burn. You guys are all doing this because you can't get fucking laid. It's fantastic. And I didn't even have to say it. You guys are all upset because you got all this testosterone building up in your fucking nutsack, and you are such a shitty, stupid person that you can't find anyone to fucking suck your dick. It's great. Hang on, let's listen to this again.
Men want to climb the dominance hierarchy, and the reason they want to climb the dominance hierarchy is because that's how they get access to women.
I was going to actually ask earlier in the discussion when you were talking about the familiar and the unfamiliar and the structure. So it seems like we all want to live within a structure, but we don't want the rules to apply to ourselves.
Alright, so he just said, you were talking something earlier about the familiar and the unfamiliar, but he's basically saying it seems like people want to live within the structure, but they don't want that structure to apply to themselves.
Well, we have this contradictory problem. We want to be protected by the structure, but we want to advance our position within it. And so that means what that should mean, and this is, I think, the definition of civilized behavior, is that you're allowed to advance your position within the structure as long as you don't disrupt it negatively.
Okay, so here's the really cool thing of what he's saying. As long as you function within the societal structure that we have set up, which basically means our laws, then you can advance. If you work outside of those, then there's a problem. So you can't pull a gun on a cop and expect that to be working within inside of it. So you are allowed to work up. We are okay with you moving up the side, the structure, as long as you don't disturb it. The moment you pull a gun on an officer, you are disturbing the structure of society. Therefore you forfeited your life by most standards.
And I think most people do that. In fact, I think people in civilized countries do that so effectively that it's an absolute incomprehensible miracle. I can't understand how or why it ever got established. But like a psychopath will climb the ladder and cut the rungs off underneath him, fundamentally, right? It's like he doesn't care. He doesn't even care if the damn thing maintains itself.
Now, let's think about what he just said in regards to Sean Reed. This person has no regard to the people below him. This person, Sean Reed, was driving around with stuff on his social media of him just shooting a gun randomly. He had no regard for anybody else, regardless of who they were, how much money they made, what their IQ was, or anything else like that. And yet some of you were trying to defend him like he's some innocent person who just went astray. No, he was a fucking idiot.
He's perfectly willing to have it destroyed after he's exhausted it. But if everyone acted like that, or even if a fairly substantial percentage of people acted like that, the whole thing would come to a halt virtually, like in no time flat. So I mean, why? See, you might, here's a reason, likely. Because one of the things we were talking about was masculine violence. Now, the thing about masculine violence is it only tends to emerge in situations where there don't seem to be any other reasonably viable means of advancing status. So it's not reasonable to say that men are aggressive. You can say that on average men are more aggressive than women. And you can also say that if you put men in a situation where they can see status differences, but they have no means of moving forward, that they're likely to turn to aggression as a way of establishing dominance. And then you can say that the reason for that is because it makes them more attractive. The fundamental reason, yeah?
Okay, so all of you who are really upset and you feel the need to beat your chest, what you really need to be doing is advancing your life, getting things together, get a hobby, get a better job, do something to make yourself more attractive to the opposite sex, and go get laid. And maybe you won't be so upset. You will move up the dominance hierarchy, and you'll feel better. All right, you guys should definitely check out other Jordan Peterson stuff. Also, if you had a hard time understanding anything that was going on here, I'm sorry that like things are not boding well for you. Anyway, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Don't subscribe. I don't want it. Later.